You're listening to the only podcast for your Texas AirHogs, Hog Heaven, with your host Tim Costello and co-host Zach Lee. You are listening to Hog Heaven here on Mixler.com/TX AirHogs. Welcome into Hog Heaven, the new AirHogs podcast brought to you by the voice of the AirHogs, Tim Costello, joined with the executive producer of the AirHogs broadcast, Zach Lee.
Hi, Tim. How you doing? I'm excited for our first podcast here on Hog Heaven.
I am as well, as we get set to have a three-part episode today. We'll take a look at AirHogs baseball, American Association baseball, and then finally we'll take a quick look around the major leagues as we get pretty close to a trade deadline coming up here at the end of July. Just one trade deadline this year, so it should be pretty hectic.
Yeah, we're about a week away. The 31st is when that deadline hits. We're now 6 days from the 31st, so probably a lot of moves to be made here in the coming days, and we'll probably get you ready for what to expect, what to look for, and who's probably leaving, who's moving, who's getting a new team.
I am the voice of the Texas AirHogs, Tim Costello. If you haven't listened to our broadcast before, we're available on AmericanAssociationBaseball.tv as well as Mixler.com/TX AirHogs. Zach, of course, the executive producer of the Texas AirHogs broadcast. We appreciate everyone who's finding us through the Mixler app for the first ever episode of Hog Heaven. We figured with the team in Winnipeg and myself not able to travel to Winnipeg, this was a great time to kind of enter the podcast world.
It's not a bad time. We can catch up. We can keep y'all updated on the team y'all like to follow. And like you mentioned, we can keep up on some of the American Association across the league.
Let's take a quick look at where this team is, Zach. And when I mean this team, I mean the Texas AirHogs. The AirHogs were flying high heading into the American Association All-Star break. They had won 4 straight games. You know, one was a crazy walk-off. One was an 8th inning come-from-behind victory. There was a lot of magic in the air here this last 4 games of the home series for the Texas AirHogs.
Yeah, they, like you said, they kind of won in every way you possibly can. They had a walk-off win. They had a shutout. They had a blowout. They had a late come-from-behind victory. So really winning any and every way you can here in the last homestand here. We were really treated to some very good baseball. But they took that 4-game win streak into Winnipeg last night, and I do not believe fared so well. It was a 7-2 loss to break their 4-game winning streak. But hey, we still technically have that home winning streak, Tim.
Yeah, it's definitely a home win streak for the AirHogs. They hadn't won 4 games in a row. You know, we were talking about it with the GM, Nate Gutierrez, who got here a year before I did. They didn't do it in 2017, Nate's first year here. You know, they didn't ever win 3 in a row last year or at any point this year. So it was a really big moment for this Hogs team developmentally. We understand that maybe the season didn't start the way a lot of people expected it to, but we're still in the middle of a baseball season. There's a lot of ball left to be played, and I think it's going to be pretty competitive here at home, especially when the AirHogs get back.
Definitely. I mean, we just barely passed the All-Star break, a little past the halfway point. We've now played 61 games here on the season, but that leaves just 39. But that's plenty of baseball to be played, a lot of time for fortunes to change, and perhaps a couple more winning streaks to go ahead and beat the record that, you know, just do a little better than the AirHogs did last year. We've mentioned it many times on the broadcast. There has been great improvement from these players, especially from the Chinese national team, in terms of where they were last year moving into this season.
You know, one of the guys I look at when you mentioned last year to this year, let's look at Gan Chuan. You know, Gan Chuan last year maybe had a little bit better numbers at times, but he also had a different defense behind him. I see a different Gan Chuan who got the no decision in the final win of that 4-game home winning streak. Gan Chuan went out, gave 5 innings of 1-run baseball.
Yeah.
He's a different pitcher right now than he ever was at any point last year. He's using his stuff differently. He's almost pitching backwards. He's pitching more like the other American pitchers in this league, using his breaking ball early in counts, getting ahead. Then you don't know, is this guy going to throw me the splitter again? Is he going to come back with that fastball? Gan Chuan, against Lincoln especially, really had guys off balance.
No, definitely. You could see, I think, kind of a coming together of all the things he'd been working on through the season. I mean, just looking at his numbers between this season and last year, he's he's already got more strikeouts and less games and innings pitched, so he's clearly become more comfortable in terms of it going at hitters, which is kind of what you mentioned us seeing in that Salt Dog series. But while the rest of the numbers might not be quite where they were, I think he's had a little bit of the bad luck that we talk about with some of the other guys. He doesn't always get the run support he needs. It might just be one inning where he didn't look his greatest, but there were 4 other wonderful innings that he came out and gave you. So it's kind of one of the things where you can't take the numbers too far into account because there's a lot of things he's been doing that the numbers don't show.
No, absolutely. The numbers don't lie, but at the same time, they can be misleading.
Yeah, they don't tell the whole story.
When you look overall, 5.66 ERA compared to a 4.24 last year, how can you sit here and tell me he's been better this year? But when you look at how he's using his pitches, how he's using his stuff, how he's attacking batters, he's got a more American style to how he's pitching this year. He's not shying away from contact. He's not.
Exactly. I think that speaks to how much more comfortable he's gotten. The fact that you see him being the more aggressive guy, the guy going after pitchers in these at-bats.
Absolutely, Zach. But let's take another look at a Chinese pitcher, Zhang Tao. Zhang Tao,
that's my favorite. Personally.
He is my favorite guy as well. He's been dealing with a little bit of fatigue, back tightness, whatever you want to call it. Here's a guy who's leaps and bounds better than last year. Was 3-3 in 8 games, 6 starts, had a 5.83 ERA. This year he hasn't gotten the wins because he gets absolutely no run support when he's out there. But that being said, he keeps you in almost every game that he pitches, and he gives the AirHogs a great opportunity to win. He almost always goes at least 5 innings, typically between 1 to 3 runs since he's been out there, and the wins haven't gone his way. Yeah, I wish Zhang Tao had more wins, but
sometimes it's something as a pitcher you can't control.
Exactly, but he's in 7 games he's got 34 and a third innings pitched, which means pretty much every time he's gone 5 innings once he went 4 and a third. But other than that, he's out there competing every single game, giving the AirHogs a great opportunity to win.
Definitely. I mean, and this is a guy he's kind of the opposite of Gan Chuan. The numbers tell you that Zhang Tao has gotten better, and you look at that. He's got a lower ERA at this point. He's got a whole nother start than he had last season. He's pitched 5 more innings than he had up till last year. I mean, the strikeouts are a bit down. The walks are right at the same number. I mean, he is really one of the other guys, especially on the mound for the Chinese national team, that has really showed a large improvement in his game.
And with Zhang Tao, it's attitude, right? Because he is a bulldog on the mound. He is a very young guy, 20, 21 years old.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't know it the way he pitches. You wouldn't know that this kid basically out there who has the attitude of a winner, who has the will not give an at-bat away, who just goes right after guys who, Zhang Tao is 5'9", 155 pounds. Look at Keon Barnum for Chicago. Zhang Tao goes right after a guy like that. He doesn't back away from these hitters. And that's the growth. That's what we're looking for. And that's what I'm really excited for this final month and a half of the American Association season.
Definitely. And, I think you touched on something really big there. I think it's something that even us, here in the booth take for granted and forget about. These Chinese guys are young. I mean, I think the oldest Chinese player on the roster is 24. That would
Li Ning.
You would be the youngest guy on almost any team at 24 in this league.
Yeah.
This is a league full of men, and these are most of them, some of them teenagers still playing for the Chinese national team, getting to play almost every day, every other day, playing against men, and they're out here. Sure, their numbers aren't necessarily exactly where you'd want them to be, but I think you need to take that into account more often because when you consider that, it's very impressive what they're able to do.
You mentioned the numbers not being where you want them to be. They kind of are for this month, though, Zach. When you look at the month of July, the AirHogs as a team hitting 271, they're slugging 350, and they have the OPS up at 689. When you compare that to the regular season where the AirHogs are a 230 hitting team, they slug at 313, and their OPS is 623. So something is starting to click here for the AirHogs in the month of July.
I think the winning streak helped a lot, but 4 games doesn't make a month. I mean, this has been something that has been building up for these guys for the last couple weeks. And, I mean, you mentioned the team doing really well. I mean, the 4 guys we were just talking about here earlier, Li Ning hitting 384 here in the month of July. Javion Randall, since coming back on June 28th, has been a 360 hitter here in the month of July. He's hitting 351. Jonathan Maroney hitting 337. Stuart Imes 295. I mean, those are your core guys. Those are 4 of your biggest players, and all 4 of them are having absolutely monster months of July here.
Exactly, and that's a big reason why this AirHogs team has had more success in the month, because it's not the pitching staff. You know, the pitching staff, it's not been great in July, but it hasn't been really any worse than it's been all season.
It's been about average. I would say, I mean, at least of late, your starters have been giving you more. I know earlier in this month the bullpen was just absolutely exhausted. There were games that they just knew, you're going to have to give me 3 innings. There's no one else behind you. I think we kind of saw that fatigue set in.
And that's part of the reasons why this bullpen ERA is inflated right now, because some guys had to take it in the chin, especially on that long home series with Cleburne, Chicago, and then Gary.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I think it went Cleburne, Gary, Chicago. Either way, though, that was a long 9-game home stretch where the AirHogs bullpen was used,
got beat up.
And was used heavily.
I mean, Taylor Wright became a starter in that series.
And that was a time where you needed him. You needed him in the bullpen.
Exactly. And I think it was the last game he came out. He didn't get a start. He has to come in, clean up someone's mess, and then there's no one behind you, kid. You're going to have to still go, even though you've given up 4 runs in an inning. So it has been a pitch-by-committee scenario here for a long time, but it's really nice here towards the end of July that we're seeing some of the starters come in and, really eat up innings for you, really conserve those bullpen arms moving forward here into the second half.
It started in Kansas City on the last road trip. Manoah went 7 innings, gave up 3 runs. Then you had Kevin Hilton, 7 innings, 3 runs. Then you had Travis Ballou go 6 innings in that game. Then the AirHogs brought it back home. The first couple games against Milwaukee, didn't go the way you wanted them to. But then the AirHogs pitching staff really hit their stride for the final 4 home games of that.
The homestand. And I think it's almost poetic that the guy who starts it for you is your 2019 All-Star, Kevin Hilton. And
the pitcher of the week, because that performer.
That was amazing.
Milwaukee hit 7 homers in 2 games.
Yeah.
They had outscored us, I believe it was 25-3 or 23-3. It was 11-2 and 12-1 were the first 2 games in that series. Kevin Hilton comes in and, just all of a sudden 8 innings of 3-hit baseball, only walking 1 and striking out 9 on a hot offense. That set the tone, because after that, then Manoah goes 6 innings, 1 run. Travis Ballou goes 6 innings, 2 runs, and Ganchuan goes 5 innings, just 1 run. That was 4 straight excellent starting pitching outings.
4 games, you got 25 innings from your starting pitching. I mean, that's
winning baseball.
That's beautiful. If you can reliably get that, you're going to be a winning team at any level.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no doubt, and that's something the AirHogs have really missed all season long. They might get 1 or 2 in the rotation,
but they haven't put a full turn. They haven't put a full turn through the rotation,
and I think that went leaps and bounds for them. I think the addition of Eric Manoah Jr. has been a phenomenal add to this rotation. I think it helps take some of the weight off of some of the other guys, and so moving forward, I'm really excited to see what he can do with this team as a solid piece of this rotation.
You mentioned the addition of Eric Manoah Jr., and I agree it's been an excellent add. We have to give Billy Martin Jr. his props on that one. But
I think he's well aware what he did.
But with Manoah, it's not only what he does on the mound is great, right?
Yeah.
There was no one in this team who ran stadium stairs at any point, right? No one was running the stadium at any point during the season. Eric Manoah gets here.
Suddenly it's a trend.
First couple days he's running it by himself. Mm-hmm. Then he's got, I think it was Wang Shua was running with him.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's 3 guys. Then it's 5 guys. Then it's 10 guys. Now it's all the Chinese pitchers do stairs with Eric Manoah. And that's the kind of locker room guy that he is. He wants to help. He wants to say, here's what I know works for me. My legs stay strong throughout the game because I do this.
Definitely.
Do you want to try it with me?
I think it speaks perfectly to something Billy has touched on many times on the broadcast, especially earlier in the season. We need a certain type of guy here. With the Chinese national team here, our main focus is going to be more on the development side of these players. And so you need a guy that can work with that. And Eric Manoah is that kind of guy. It really helps that he's a very good pitcher as well. But he's the kind of guy who can lead. He can lead by example, and he is interested in making sure that not only he gets better, but the guys he's playing with gets better. And so that example of him running the stairs, that's exactly who he is. He's going to make sure that, hey, this is something that helps me. It can help you too. You should be a part of this. And that's what has become since he's joined.
Real quickly, before we take our first break, the AirHogs still have 5 games left on this road trip. 2 more in Winnipeg and one final series in Sioux City. AirHogs have already been there once. They'll head up to Sioux City, or probably down, basically, when you're coming from Canada.
Yeah.
They'll head down to Sioux City from Winnipeg for a Saturday, Sunday, Monday wraparound series. The AirHogs did not fare well against the Explorers the first time up there, and Sioux City's playing some good baseball right now, Zach, but it's a different AirHogs team than it was the first time we went to Sioux City.
I think so. I mean, we've got that home win streak. I know they didn't win last night, but I think the All-Star break maybe kind of messed up the rhythm.
At the worst possible time,
exactly.
right?
That winning streak really did. I mean, you'll take a winning streak anytime you can get it, but for how the AirHogs have played this year, and then they get that 4-game winning streak and then go right on the break, was probably not in their best interest, but it's still something they can build off of moving forward.
Absolutely. Let's take a quick break right here. We'll come back on the other side. We'll talk more about the American Association as a whole. The All-Star game just played on Tuesday. It was a phenomenal event. We'll talk about that. Some of the races down the stretch. The North Division of the American Association sure is tight with 3 really good teams at the top. We will talk more about that and the rest of the American Association after we take a quick break on Hog Heaven, your AirHogs podcast. We'll be right back after this.
Come on out to Texas AirHogs Stadium here in beautiful Grand Prairie. On August 3rd, we will be having Come Sail Away Night. We will be auctioning off a cruise for 2 as well as plenty of other prizes for our AirHogs faithful. You can listen to the radio broadcast at mixler.com/TXAirHogs or check out the video stream on AmericanAssociationBaseball.tv so you can watch your Texas AirHogs. Make your way out to beautiful Grand Prairie at Texas AirHogs Stadium. On August 17th, we will be having our Back to School and Scout Night. If you purchase a $20 ticket, you will be able to camp on the field and watch a post-game movie here on the big video board. You can listen in on the radio broadcast at mixler.com/TXAirHogs or even check out the video stream at AmericanAssociationBaseball.tv. And remember, go Hogs!
Welcome back into Hog Heaven. Tim Costello with Zach Lee as we continue our talk about American Association baseball. Zach, the Northern Division in this American Association is absolutely crazy right now. The St. Paul Saints currently have a 1-game lead over Fargo and a 2.5-game lead over the Chicago Dogs, but Chicago's 14-2 in their last 16 games, and they still trail by 2.5.
I mean, that just shows you how close that division is. I mean, don't forget about Winnipeg. Winnipeg's only 5.5 games out, too. I mean, those are 4 really good teams. We've seen all of those guys a couple times now this season. Personally, if I were making picks today, I'd pick Fargo probably for who I think it has the best shot in the American Association, but all 4 of those are quality teams that have a real shot at winning that division.
Fargo's very good. So is St. Paul. I'm just curious, now that they've lost Max Murphy, that's a pretty big bat in that lineup, but they do a really good job of replacing people. They always have a good bat ready to go, it seems like.
They've got that, and they have a really good pitching staff. Their pitching staff is very good.
Yeah, when you look at St. Paul this season, they're currently 3rd in the league with a 3.95. Then you look at Fargo-Moorhead. You talk about a good pitching staff. Fargo's going to be tough to beat down the stretch. They hit .291 as a team, and then they have the best ERA in the league with a 3.48.
Yeah, I mean, right there, you've got arguably the best pitching staff and the best team coming up to bat.
They have the best pitching staff, and then they're tied for number 1 in batting average. They do hit more home runs than the number 1 team, Sioux Falls, and they do strike out a bit more as well. They slug 20 points higher. They're on base at a .004% less. So I would say they're a little bit better offense than the Canaries.
Because you have to take into factor that park that the
ballpark's
Canaries
a
play
batter's
in.
park too. Yeah,
I mean, that bloats those numbers a decent amount.
And Fargo still hits more home runs
Exactly.
than them.
I mean, 1 more double, but yeah, they hit 5 more home runs. And like I said, those numbers are bloated for Sioux Falls because, as you mentioned, that is a hitter's paradise out there in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, the bird cage certainly allows birds to fly the coop pretty frequently.
They fly high out there.
Let's look at the Southern Division right now, Zach. The division the AirHogs are in. Cleburne currently has a 3.5-game lead over Sioux City, which is where the AirHogs head next. Sioux City, though, has won 5 games in a row. Cleburne had a big win last night in St. Paul. Do you think Cleburne has what it takes, to hold on down the stretch? They were not a first-place team, and they came to Grand Prairie. They got hot. They've stayed hot. There's some teams I think are better all-around baseball teams in this league than the Cleburne Railroaders, but right now they're the hottest team in the South.
I would agree with you. I mean, it's something that the numbers here won't agree with me on, but the Railroaders can hit. From what I saw whenever we went to Cleburne and whenever they were here is they have a star-studded lineup up and down the sheets. A lot of them hit for power and hit for power often, but what surprises me is they have the number 2 ranked pitching staff in the entire American Association. So moving forward, I think they have a very good shot. I think what's going to hurt them is their fielding.
Well, they're the worst defensive team in this league, and it's not even close.
Yeah, they have so many errors on the season. I can just see something late in the year, fielding mistake or something really coming back to bite them hard. But at this point, you really have no reason to doubt them. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. You mentioned they really did get hot of late whenever they last came here to Texas or to Grand Prairie, but right now they're playing some of the best ball in the South Division.
Another team playing great baseball is Sioux City. They've won 5 in a row. They've got some talent on that team, too. Jose Sermo's the reigning MVP of the league. Their shortstop, Sampson, is excellent. He can play short or he can play third, but with Sermo, he can also play short and third. There's just so much talent on that team. It's going to be a dogfight, I feel like, down the stretch in the South.
It really is, because there's not a far and away candidate. I mean, it's really the same way in both divisions. Neither division really has anyone that has just run away with it at this point, and it's really shaping up for a very exciting end to this season.
That being said, though, I do have to feel when it comes down to the championship series, though, whoever makes it out of the North, they've got to be the favorite, right?
I would think so. Just the North seems to have the stronger set of teams at this point. They have the top 3 records in the association right now. In St. Paul with the best, Fargo with the second best, and Chicago Dogs. So
when you look to the recently played All-Star game, that went the way of the North. They scored in 5 straight innings. They went 7-3. It would pardon me.
Yeah, they win they go ahead and win the All-Star game there. 4 of the top 5 teams ranked in this American Association right now are North Division teams.
And Winnipeg's kind of starting to wake up a little bit too.
Yeah.
They've won 3 in a row. They had a bit of a tough stretch, but they're an older team. There's a lot of veterans on that Winnipeg team. It took some time for them to get going, but these guys know how to win.
If I'm not mistaken, too, I think they traveled a lot more in the first half.
They had a long
and
travel
I think
trip.
for them being in Canada, they have probably the hardest time playing on the road, just in the fact of what it takes to get to these places. Granted, some of the places in the North Division are still fairly close to Canada. There's still the
I don't think the drive, say, from like a Fargo to Winnipeg is really that terribly far. I don't have a map in front of me, but I know it took 17 and a half hours to get from Texas to Fargo. There's no way I think it's 23 hours in general for us to get to Winnipeg on a bus, so a 5.5-hour bus ride.
I believe so. I mean, our first series was against Winnipeg. I had a chance to talk to Kevin McGovern and just asking him what that drive was like. He said it was a 22-hour drive here, and then they were still going to Cleburne. And
they break it, but the nice thing was coming here, they broke it up. When you go back, that's one solid drive.
Exactly.
I don't know though about this North division. The North is going to be tough. A team that's really surprising to me is Lincoln, because when the AirHogs went to Lincoln, they were a first-place ball club.
They've really hit it hard.
9 straight losses for Lincoln. They're 1-9 in their last 10. They were swept here by the AirHogs. They've lost, I think it's now 10 straight road games.
Yeah, that was something that I remember you bringing up. They were 9-22, I believe, whenever they came into the series with the AirHogs on the road. So they left 9-25.
And Lincoln had a lot of all-star representation. And they have some guys who swing the bat well offensively. Curt Smith is a top 10 player in this league. Cody Regis, an all-star.
And
Not sure what's going on up there.
And it's not like Lincoln, the Haymarket Field is a real big hitter's park or anything.
It's friendly, but
it's not like the Birdcage.
No,
where,
it's not.
Where
It's just a beautiful ballpark. It's a great. I'd say it's a great environment for hitters and pitchers, realistically, Zach.
Yeah, it really is perplexing when you look at that because, like you said, just in the early part of the season, they looked like they were probably going to take the South by storm. They probably looked like the favorite early on to be one of the top 2 teams in this division, and now at this point they're sitting, in the cellar with the AirHogs, 11 games behind the Cleburne Railroaders, which I don't think anyone would have thought that would be the case in June.
I don't either, and I think when the AirHogs beat the first time we were in Lincoln, it was a 4-game set. We went 1-3, but we very easily could have gone 3-1 the way those games went. We left Lincoln feeling really good. We went from Lincoln to Chicago. We then swept Chicago in the 2 games that we were up there. That was a big road trip for the AirHogs. Chicago was also a first-place team at that time, and after that, it's just been weird for Lincoln. They can't win on the road, and I can't figure out why, because that's a really good ball club. Yvonne Marine, I've said numerous times on the broadcast, that's who I voted for at shortstop for the All-Star team. When the AirHogs left Lincoln, Yvonne Marine was a .275 hitter and played Gold Glove quality shortstop. I couldn't ask for more than that for an All-Star vote for shortstop. He's now hitting in the 220s, so that's a big part of it. Cody Regis went from hitting .330, he's down into the 280s. That's a 50-point drop. Randolph Oduber, I saw his average was down in the 270s. That's a 25-point drop from when we were there. John Sansone is no longer even on the team. Lincoln's hitting 227 as a team in July, and you can see why. Yvonne Marine 160. Cody Regis, 162. Christian Ibarra, 208. Forrest Allday, 209. Daniel Herrera, 222. That's not going to cut the mustard.
No, it's really not. I mean, Curt Smith is really the only Salt Dog performing so far in the month of July.
345, but Curt Smith, that guy's just a hitter.
Yeah,
he hits his whole life.
I was going to say, he's a career Salt Dog at this point.
7th season with Lincoln, but he was a 300 hitter last year. He hit 300 the year before. I feel like Curt Smith rolls out of bed and hits 300. I know he puts a lot of work into it, but he's just one of those guys who you just go ahead and when the season starts, you pencil Curt Smith in for a 300, 15, 20 homers, and that's what he's going to give you.
Yeah, definitely. And you look on the other side of it, Cleburne almost had the complete polar opposite season as Lincoln. They started out kind of slow, and then July hit, and here in the month of July, they're hitting 286. They have been just on fire since playing the AirHogs here in Grand Prairie.
When Casey Huth was here, he was someone that we circle as a who's cold, right?
Yeah.
And here he is in July hitting 328. Hunter Clannon, another guy that was ice cold, hitting 304 in July. They're really turning it around.
I was going to say, I think we picked the wrong guys for who's cold because we really motivated those bats, I suppose.
Well, Hunter Clannon also almost broke a window in the parking lot with a home run he hit in that series.
He almost hit that out there to the shipping deck behind us.
Real quickly, we want to mention a couple of guys that were picked up. I know it happened a few weeks ago, but Josh Prince and Max Murphy now in the Arizona Diamondbacks organization. Josh Prince actually
playing in Reno in AAA.
He's playing in Reno, AAA baseball. Got off to a very good start. Actually had a hit in every game he had played to start his time in Reno. Now as we pull up Josh's numbers, he's still playing pretty darn good. He's going to be valuable there for that Reno ball club, hitting 344 in Reno right now. He's played 13 games, has 11 base hits in just 32 at bats. So he's off to a great start. And of course, the thing about Josh too, he's going to play a bunch of different positions for you. So as we look at what he's done in Reno, I had a little trouble with the mouse as I gained control of it from Zach. But this year in Reno, he's already played first base, second base, third base, left field for this Reno ball club. He's going to be extremely valuable for them.
That's what he was doing for us. He was playing anywhere and everywhere that he was needed, and he was giving you quality performance at every position he was at.
Let's take another quick break right here. We'll come back on the other side. The MLB trade deadline is coming rapidly, just 6 days away. Zach and I have some thoughts on who will be traded, who's not going to be traded, as well as some good packages for those guys. Also a little contender-pretender as we will wrap up Hog Heaven. But take a couple minutes right here. We'll be back on the other side to talk a little MLB. We'll be right back on Hog Heaven after this.
Coming out to Texas AirHogs Stadium here in beautiful Grand Prairie. On August 3rd, we will be having Come Sail Away Night. We will be auctioning off a cruise for two, as well as plenty of other prizes for our AirHogs faithful. You can listen to the radio broadcast at mixler.com/TXAirHogs or check out the video stream on AmericanAssociationBaseball.tv so you can watch your Texas AirHogs. Make your way out to beautiful Grand Prairie at Texas AirHogs Stadium. On August 17th, we will be having our Back to School and Scout Night. If you purchase a $20 ticket, you will be able to camp on the field and watch a post-game movie here on the big video board. You can listen in on the radio broadcast at mixler.com/TXAirHogs or even check out the video stream at AmericanAssociationBaseball.tv. And remember, go Hogs!
Welcome back into Hog Heaven. Tim Costello with Zach Lee as we head to our third and final segment here on the podcast, talking a little MLB baseball. Major League Baseball's one and only trade deadline just 6 days away, Zach. Are you a fan of the new one deadline rule? Did you like the August 31st deadline? What are your thoughts?
I kind of like the one deadline rule. I think while you don't get to wait as long as you used to with the August deadline and, maybe still try to make some decisions, I think it's just a little bit better moving it up. It gives the guys who get traded a little bit more time to, integrate into the team, and I think it ends up making a better product.
I agree with you for the most part there, but there's just the Astros got Verlander on August 31st with like 30 seconds to spare.
Yeah.
That's, that trade saved that season. If we don't get Verlander, we don't win the World Series that year. So I am always going to be a little partial to the August waiver, the waiver trade deadline. But I can see why they're making the decision. It's confusing, right? For the regular fan.
I agree. What I would argue, though, is that had there only been the July 31st deadline, I think you guys just make that move then.
I don't, though. I think Verlander saw the extra month of what the Tigers were doing, saw they were heading towards a rebuild.
That could have done
He was leaving the only franchise here. It took another month of him to be convincing. I think the Astros tried to make that deal in July, and I don't think Verlander was ready to give up on Detroit yet at that point.
That's a good point, but maybe it's just I think that just having that deadline later might have been a reason he wasn't ready to make his mind up yet.
Very well.
Having that extra month, maybe he wanted to see what that extra month held, and it didn't have what he wanted, and so he moved.
How much of it do you think now with this new deadline, if you're a team, say, like the Angels, right? You're 11 you're 11 and a half games back. You're kind of in it for the wild card, but at the same time there's a lot of teams ahead of you. When you have that August 31st deadline, maybe you can play it through August and see how we end up. Then we make some moves. Now decision time is happening a lot faster than it really ever has, or even maybe even lower than the Angels. We'll look at the Rangers, for example, right? The Rangers, some guys might believe they still have a chance. I think most baseball fans realize this is not their year, but last year they could sell off in August. They could make some trades where, hey, let me hold on to some of my key pieces, and then we'll decide later on. Now, you need to know by July 15th, really, when you start taking those phone calls, am I competing this year or am I selling?
It does make that a lot harder. The problem I have with the Rangers is I'm afraid they're going to make the wrong decision because of the stadium coming up next year. I think that they're not necessarily wanting to sell based on the performance of what's happening this season because they don't want to not have butts in seats in the new stadium.
See, I'll disagree with you there. I think that makes them more likely to sell, to get rid of some of the mediocre talent that they have. They're going to spend next year in free agency. I guarantee you the Rangers will spend in free agency. So, I'll use a guy like Asdrubal Cabrera, the third baseman, as an example. He's on a one-year contract, I believe.
He's
There's no reason to hold on to that guy. You can get a middling prospect for him.
Maybe. If someone is really dying for a third base, it's not like
It's
he's
not even
he's
just
giving
for
you
a
great
third
numbers.
baseman. He's, an Eduardo Nunez type player who can play a few different positions for you. He can play second, short, or third. He's a handy guy to have on your bench in a postseason roster. Can fill a few different roles in case of an injury. You can get a double-A player for someone like that, and then you're going to go sign a third baseman in free agency anyway. So why not get something back before you go spend big money at the end of the day?
Yeah, I'd look at maybe him moving. I'd look at maybe Pence moving.
I don't see Pence leaving. I see because he's a UT Arlington guy, I see Pence kind of playing his final years with the Rangers, unless unless a playoff team, if a playoff team comes and has a chance to win a ring and really wants Hunter Pence, I could see them making that move. I don't think Hunter Pence at this point in his career is
worth much.
Not even that. What's he going to bring to a team in contention for the playoffs? He's not a strong defensive candidate anymore in the outfield. Doesn't hit for a ton of pop.
He's going to probably have to go to an American League team. He's a DH candidate at this point mainly.
His chase rate is outrageous.
Yes.
And I love Hunter Pence. He was my favorite Astro for a long time. At this point in his career, I don't see Hunter Pence as the player that he once was. I think he's happy to finish his career up in the city that he grew up in.
I just wonder if it's something that has been talked about ad nauseum here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area is Rugi Odor. And I could just see Hunter Pence being part of the sweetener deal for taking on that Rougned Odor contract.
Who in their right mind is going to trade for Rugi Odor, who barely hits 220 at the salary that he's owed?
That's the problem, is that you're going to have to find something else for them to take in order to get Rugi off.
I mean, it's not going to be a playoff team. There's no playoff team who feels that guy's going to – I mean, at this point, if the Rangers want to get rid of Rugi, you have to DFA him. I mean, that's –
more or less.
That's where you're at. You're going to eat some money. You're going to DFA a guy who, let's just face it, is not very good. But let's look around the league right here. It's, as we mentioned, trade deadline. We kind of got a little distracted by the new rule, but there should be a lot happening. We hear a lot of chatter. You hear Noah Syndergaard out there. You hear Trevor Bauer. You hear Madison Bumgarner. There's some big names, starters that are being tossed about.
Atlanta's supposed to be a big buyer. They're looking for pitching.
Greinke's apparently available.
Yes.
Who do you actually see moving? Because every year we hear these big-time names, but those aren't the one. To me, the most valuable guy out there is Marcus Stroman, an elite-level starter who's still under team control for a couple of years, who has arbitration years coming. Those are the ones that teams really want because they don't have to give up a ton of money up front to get this guy. The rentals are fine. You're not going to have to pay him. But sometimes when you got to give up an elite prospect for 2 months of a player, is it worth it?
Yeah, it's one of those things that kind of makes you balk whenever you really start to think of the logistics of a trade like that. If you're going to ask me, out of those guys, who probably has the biggest chance of moving, I think I'd probably pick Syndergaard. I feel like some of the things I've heard, that relationship is kind of soured. The New York Mets are definitely on the downswing at this point. It's really the start of another rebuilding phase for them. I would probably look for Syndergaard to be on the move. I know Atlanta is looking for starting pitching. They have a young, vast farm system. They have young players playing now, and they're leading their division. So they have the capital to go out and make a move, get a veteran guy. I'd like to see Syndergaard land in Atlanta.
I think Syndergaard's on the move. I agree with you there. I think 100% Madison Bumgarner.
Yes,
he's on the last year of his contract. The Giants, although they're in second place, they're 14.5 games behind the Dodgers. That move's going to be made. I'm interested in the lefty from Detroit, Boyle, as well, because Austin Boyle's having the best year of his career. He's got high strikeout numbers. He's working from the left side, but at the same time, he's pitching on a really bad team.
Yeah.
When you take a guy like that, sometimes it goes two ways. Now there's pressure he's never been under before, and he cracks, and we saw that with Weaver going to the Yankees. When he got there. But then at the other time, you see guys like, when Verlander came to Houston, who was happy to be pitching in high leverage games, loved the intensity, loved the environment. It makes you nervous a little bit when you go get a guy who hasn't pitched in a meaningful game in 5 years.
Definitely.
But at the same time, you look at stuff, you look at spin rate, you look at strikeouts, and he's got those numbers.
We have the pedigree of Verlander. It's really kind of a no-brainer on pulling that trigger. But with a guy like Austin Boyle, I think that's someone that no one's really looking at super heavily. You could probably get for a lot cheaper than some of the guys we've already named. And so you could get some of that production probably without having to give up, top prospects in your farm system.
And that's why I kind of like
maybe
a move like that, but at
those
same
are sometimes
time,
the smarter moves, or the ones that aren't going to get the most fanfare or clicks or whatever. It's the one that is going to get you, quality outings at a cheaper price.
Right, and that's when you look at, I'm gonna go back to my team in the majors. The Astros, they balked at what Dallas Keuchel wanted from them this offseason. And they went to...
And it hasn't hurt them a bit.
No, when they went to another lefty who does the same thing at a lot cheaper price, Wade Miley.
Yep.
You can get production at a cheaper price, and that's why I'm circling Stroman. Marcus Stroman from the Toronto Blue Jays, maybe not having the best year, but you get him with a good pitching coach, still under team control, still has arbitration eligibility. Yep. You're probably going to lose Garrett Cole to free agency next year. When you make a trade this year, you're focusing on, number one, I get Lance McCullers back next year.
Mm-hmm.
Verlander's back. Who's that third head of the three-headed monster going to be? Let's go ahead and get him for the rest of this year, and let's get it for next year too.
It is a no-brainer in my opinion. If the Astros could get Marcus Stroman, that would be, as a Rangers fan, I would not be happy. That's probably the best news you could hear. I mean, it's one of the situations where he's now playing for a team that is not in contention, that is not very good, and whether or not people want to hear it or not, that affects how you come out and play. I mean, whenever for a fact, it was just a few years ago, he was one of the most highly touted, young pitchers in baseball, and that's because the Blue Jays were good. They were a good team, and he was pitching for a team in innings that mattered. And so if you bring him into the situation in Houston, where he's once again playing meaningful baseball, I think you will see him turn around.
I 100% agree with you, Zach. Let's look at a little contender-pretender.
All right.
It's that time of the season where the standings, for the most part, are pretty settled in baseball for all but maybe two divisions.
More or less.
The Yankees have a strong stranglehold on the AL East, so we obviously know they're a strong contender. But then you look at the Rays. The Rays are in second place. They're a game above the Red Sox.
Just a game out of the wild card.
What is your thought on this Tampa Bay team? Because a lot of people assume the Red Sox are going to catch them, but when you look at what the Rays have done this season, number one, Charlie Morton has been unbelievable as a free agent coming into Tampa Bay. He's continued his success, and they've made some smart additions the last couple trade deadlines that some of those smaller deals you were just talking about that pay off in the long run.
Definitely. I think the Chris Archer deal really helped them. They got some guys that are really helping them now. Personally, if I were to have to make a decision on the Rays in terms of contender or pretender this season, I would probably give them pretender. And I don't mean that in any sort of a derogatory way. They've come out and surprised everyone this season. And I think that they have proven that they have a good young core to build around. And in the future, they could be a big problem. I just think in this season in the American League, they're probably not going to make it. If they make it, they won't make it very far.
I agree with you there, and I'll put an asterisk of unless they make a move, right?
Yeah,
if they go out and they go get a big-time front-end starter, they go out and get that big bullpen piece, maybe that changes things. But from what we've seen with the Rays,
what they have now,
but also their history,
yes,
they don't typically go out and make that move.
They really don't. They're typically the opposite. They're typically one of the teams that sells, and they make smart moves when they sell. They aren't typically a team that will give up prospects for that big-name guy. I think in Tampa Bay, they value prospects over veterans a little bit more.
Absolutely. What about the defending champion Red Sox, Zach? They sit 2 games out of that wild card spot. They had a slow start to the season, but they are coming on a bit here as of late. They just made a trade for Andrew Kashner.
Yep.
What do you think about the Red Sox?
The Red Sox are interesting. Coming into the season, everyone thought, they'd be a strong repeat candidate. Chris Sale was, I think he signed that big contract this offseason. He was expected to have a great year. He really started out slow. He's been playing a lot better of late. They're another team that I have a hard time believing in at this point. I understand that I think they're 2 games out of the wild card. They're they're probably not going to win their division at this point. Something could happen. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of baseball to be played. 11 games is not out of it yet, but the Yankees are playing great baseball at this point. I just don't think they have a chance to catch them. I could see them sneaking into the wild card. I don't see them going very far in the playoffs.
To me, Boston was just one of those magical stories last year
Yeah.
where everything went right.
Exactly.
It's not
Most
happening at
bats
this point.
exploded.
Yeah, it's not happening this year. Now, they could go on a run in September.
Yeah, and who knows? I mean, things like that happen all the time in baseball.
But, last year it seemed like everybody had a career season for Boston where
Exactly.
this year everyone's playing the way they normally play, and they're still a good baseball team, but they're not a 105
They
win
also
team.
made the trade for Chris Sale, too.
That was 2 years
ago? Was
yeah.
it 2 years ago? Okay, my mistake. But they're another team that, if they go out and make a trade, I could change my tune really quick.
Well, they brought in Cashner. We'll see what he does.
Who knows? If they could add another front-end starter, they have a very scary pitching staff.
What about this Minnesota Twins team? I don't think a lot of people had Minnesota circled on their who's going to win the AL Central, but they made some sneaky moves. You bring in Marwin Gonzalez in the offseason on a very affordable 2-year, $24 million deal.
They got Martin Perez, and he came in and
Perez.
had a career year for them.
Their pitching staff is a lot stronger than it's been in years
Definitely.
past. They've got some young guys like Max Kepler finally coming up and doing big things for them.
I love Miguel Sano. That's one of my favorite players in the majors. He's fun to watch.
So, Zach, they have a 2-game lead. The Twins do in the AL Central over the Indians. Do you think they hold on to that division? Do you think they fall into a wild card?
I think they hold on to the division.
Okay.
I think they do. Cleveland has come on of late, but I think
Some people talk about Cleveland selling, though. People talk about
exactly, and that's kind of what I'm expecting. Is if Cleveland sells, especially, then Minnesota has that division. Cleveland has been playing better.
8-2 in their last 10.
Yeah, and meanwhile on the other end of that, 3-7 in the last 10 for the Twins. The Twins have been slipping of late, but all season long, they've had one of the best run differentials in baseball. I mean, they're one of the best offenses in baseball, which is another thing I don't think people really notice or give them credit for. I think at this point of the season, I don't see how you can't have the Twins as a contender. They have been doing it all season long.
I have to agree with you on that 100%. Their pitching staff is much improved. The
Very
offense
much.
was very versatile now as well. I love Marwin Gonzalez.
Yeah.
I'm a homer on Marwin, but at the same time,
I've heard plenty of him.
At the same time, he is the best backup you're going to have on your team at every single position, but he's also a starting quality shortstop, third baseman, and left fielder. So, and he'll play first base at a Gold Glove level for you as well.
That kind of utility is just, you can't even explain what that does for a baseball team to have a guy that can give you that kind of quality play at almost every position defensively.
We're going to skip over the Indians as we kind of mentioned them a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll move into the AL West. We know the Astros are contenders. They hold a 7.5 game lead on their division. They have the second best record of the American League. We know they're pretenders. So, Zach, let's move on to the team right now holding that second wild card spot, the Oakland A's. Oakland's come out a little slow to start the season, but middle of May on, they've been one of the best teams in baseball. They hold the second wild card spot by a game over Tampa Bay. Do you think this Oakland team has enough to hold on? And remember,
I think
no one thought they did last year either.
Exactly, and that's kind of what I was going to get at. Oakland seems to do this every year. Oakland will start out slow or start a season where no one's expecting them to do anything, and they outperform almost every year. I have a tough time doubting Oakland. I hate playing Oakland. Oakland always beats my team. Chris Davis, I swear, hits half his home runs against the Rangers every year. He's the
best
source of
247 hitter you've ever seen in your life.
Exactly, right? I mean, just the model of consistency there. But I think they do. I think that they can surprise a lot of people moving into the postseason.
I think you're probably right, but they rely so much on that bullpen.
They really do. And they're never a team to make a move. They never buy.
And what scares me is you can win, you can probably get through the regular season like that, but we saw last year in the biggest game of the year for them was their wild card game. They went bullpen day.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out. It blew up in their faces immediately where the true quote-unquote contenders, when the biggest game is on the line, you've got an ace that you're putting out there who's going to give you 7 brilliant innings. Well, and the biggest thing the A's have against them is if they have that guy, it's Mike Fiers. And don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
I like Mike Fiers. He's a competitive pitcher. I'll take him as a 3 or 4 in my rotation all day. But with everything on the line, I don't know if Mike Fiers is going to be good enough to get it done for the A's.
I know, personally, I think the A's miss Sonny Gray. I think I don't
think
remember.
they regret that trade.
I agree. I don't remember who they got in return for it, but I agree with you. Last year especially, I think they regret that trade. They go Sonny Gray instead of a bullpen day if they kept him.
Especially considering he didn't work out for the Yankees. He's now pitching for the Reds. He's available. You know, I've heard a lot about Sonny Gray maybe being on the move. What if Oakland went and got Sonny Gray back?
I mean, that's where he was at his best. It's probably in best interest for Sonny Gray. And it's probably in the best interest for the Oakland A's. That's a move that makes sense. It's just, it's kind of like I mentioned earlier. Oakland is never really buyers. They send guys away. It's something. I mean, they're one of the smaller market teams in the majors. They never like having to have a huge salary on their team. But I think losing Sonny Byers last year is something they regret moving forward.
Let's look at the NL East. A bit of a tight race, but no one's really giving the Nationals much credit. Right now it's Braves talk. Wahoo Nation is pretty strong in Atlanta. They have a 4-game lead in the division. They've got a lot of young talent on that team. They brought Dallas Keuchel in already midway through the year. The talk is, as you mentioned, they're going to add another starting pitcher. This might be a team, a pretty sneaky pick to make it out of the National League this year.
This is a team that people need to start paying attention to. This is a team that they're outperforming the schedule that they had. I mean, everyone knew they had a good farm system.
Next year was kind of when everybody
It's
circled
what
it.
everyone thought. Everyone thought it was going to be, it might be next season. It's this season. They're starting it now. They might not, win it all or go very far, but they're showing that the guys that they have are ahead of schedule. And they still have a very good farm system. Guys that haven't even made it up to the majors, that they have some of the best pitching staff in AAA right now. Personally, as a Rangers fan, I'm hoping this is where we trade Mike Minor for a prospect or two. That would make me very happy. But looking at them, like you said, the Nationals have kind of gotten lost. No one's really giving them credit. I think it's just because how amazed everyone is at what the Braves have been able to do. They really haven't really done anything since their big runs in the 90s.
With the Nationals, though, how much of it is there's not really a big star there anymore, right?
Trey Turner's probably the biggest name there.
Rendon, the third baseman's having a great year, but you don't have the Harper anymore. Harper no longer there. No one's taught. I mean, the Nationals are 55-46. They're a game and a half better than the Phillies, the team that Harper went to. No one's talking about it.
It's almost like no one wants to, because it seems that they got better almost after Bryce Harper left, and that doesn't fit the narrative that a lot of people want to put out there about what kind of guy Bryce Harper is. But sometimes that's what happens.
Let's skip the NL Central. We'll finish with that because it's so tight. We'll move to the NL West. That's a one-team race. It's a one-trick pony. I think the Dodgers are basically the Buffalo Bills of the Major League Baseball of the late 2010s.
Kershaw's your Jim Kelly.
I think the Dodgers have every chance.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah, I think the Dodgers have every chance to get to the World Series this year. I don't think they win it. At the end of the day, I don't think they have what it takes to be World Series champions. I don't think Clayton Kershaw in the playoffs is the same pitcher that he is in the regular season. We've seen it time in and time again.
I don't know if I'm ready to go there, but I would give you the fact that this team isn't as good as past teams that have gone to the World Series.
I'll say this, Zach. Clayton Kershaw was spotted a 4-0 lead in Game 5 of the World Series, and he couldn't put it away.
Yeah. He has
if you're a legend,
a few times
if you're
in the playoffs.
If you're a Major League legend, and it's Game 5 of a 2-2 World Series, and you're given a 4-0 lead, and you can't put that game away for your team, you're not an ace.
Yeah, I mean, I think Clayton Kershaw is still an ace. I would agree he does have struggles.
You're not a playoff ace, I'll say that.
Sure. Okay, I'll give you that. He's not a playoff ace.
You're telling me if I gave Pedro Martinez a 4-0 lead in Game 5 of a tied World Series,
you're winning that game.
Yeah, every time.
Guaranteed.
I'm happy the Dodgers didn't win that game. It was the greatest World Series game I've ever seen. That was the greatest game I've ever seen played. But that being said, he was spotted a 4-0 lead. You got to hold on to that. That's why I just don't trust this Dodgers team to win a ring until I actually see it happen.
I would agree with you on that, but my main reasoning for that is mostly because I just don't see this team being better than some of the past teams they fielded that went to the World Series, and they couldn't do it then. So
Yeah.
why would they now?
I do think, though, they have all the talent to get back.
Definitely.
I just, when you look at
In the NL, they're probably the favorite. The Cubs
Yeah.
may be the only team that could threaten.
Maybe just because of the collection of their talent.
Yeah.
I think
They match up really well with the
sum
Dodgers.
of the parts for the Cubs, I think, is better than what their actual record is.
Exactly.
In the playoffs, when you've got a Rizzo, you've got a Baez, you've got Chris Bryant, they've got the pitchers that they have there. Guys can get hot. John Lester is a proven stud in the play. That's another guy you give a 4-0 lead to. He's putting that game away for you.
Without a doubt.
That's why you can't rule out the Cubs. And clearly, I guess we're making our way to the NL Central as the Cubs right now have just a half-game lead over the Cardinals and a 2-game lead over the Brewers. I expected the Cubs and the Brewers to be right there. I never thought the Cardinals would be as good as they are this season, and I still don't think they'll stay there.
It's going to be tough. This is the division that I can't tell you who I think's a contender and who's a pretender at this point.
I still
without
feel
the
strong
deadline
about
having
the Brewers.
gone,
I feel strong about that Brewers
I feel strong
team.
about the Brewers. The Cardinals seem to always field a good team. This division's going to come down to who makes the better move at the trade deadline.
Yeah, you're
I think
absolutely
that's
right.
what it's going to come down to.
I think the Brewers have a very strong bullpen. I think they need a starting pitcher. They just lost one of their starters for the season. Just put them on the DL. It's time to make a move if you're Milwaukee. You're 2 games back. You've got arguably the best offensive player in the National League right now in his prime. You got to go make your move. You're a playoff team last year. You still have a lot of good pieces in place with Moustakas, with Kane, with Timms, with Yelich as well. Make a move. Go get a starter and make a move.
Yelich is another one of those guys we were talking about earlier that you make a trade for and no one really thinks anything too big of it.
I knew
when
he
you
was a
make
good
the trade.
player, right?
No one expected this. I mean, the whole talk was Giancarlo Stanton got traded. Giancarlo Stanton
and
traded.
even more than Yelich was Ozuna going to the Cardinals.
Yeah. There was more about that, but it's why you can never really know in baseball. There's some guys that when they leave where they were playing well, that's it. They maybe were in a perfect situation for them, maybe weren't aware of it, and now they leave and struggle because of it. Other times you got it like Yelich where he's in Miami. Everyone thinks he's a good player, not bad. He's an MVP candidate now. No one thought he had that kind of a ceiling while he was in Miami.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of people don't realize how big of a pitcher's park Miami is, too.
Yeah.
So you put him in a hitter's park in
like
Milwaukee,
yeah.
and he is loving it. Well, that is all of our MLB shop talk. I hope you enjoyed Contender Pretender. I know Zach and I did. We originally talked about doing a 30-minute podcast. Now we're approaching that hour mark.
Yeah.
So I'd say we're pretty comfortable with doing it this way. We will try and do a once-a-week Hog Heaven as the rest of the season rolls on. And who knows, maybe we'll even continue this into the off-season so that way all the Hog fans can know what the AirHogs are doing in the off-season as we get ready for our next year of baseball. But we appreciate everybody who tuned in today for the inaugural Hog Heaven. I am Tim Costello. He is Zach Lee. We will see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Y'all have a good day.
You just had to come in after me, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Stop talking.
Last word.
I end it.
Last word.